Hey, what is going on, guys? It is Young here, and today I'm back in another Fortnite video, and in today's video, I'm going to be explaining to you guys why personally I don't use claw, and I've got a lot of questions of people asking me if I use claw, what I use, and of course I use an elite controller, but I want to explain to you guys exactly why personally I don't use claw, and I probably never will. And before we get into the video, I have a V-Buck giveaway. I'm going to be giving away 2,000 V-Bucks. And if you guys want a chance to enter this giveaway, all you guys have to do is to drop a like on this video. Make sure you guys are subscribed to my channel. Turn on my post notifications and also leave a comment down below of your Xbox gamer tag, your PSN gamer tag, or Epic account. And you guys will be automatically entered into my next giveaway, which I'm giving away 2,000 V-Bucks. If you guys want some free V-Bucks, make sure you guys do enter into the giveaway. And alright guys, let's go right to the video. Alright, so in this video, I wanted to be explaining to you guys exactly why personally I don't use claw. So I've been playing a lot of games for a very long time. I used to play a lot of Call of Duty, and then eventually I started playing a little bit more Fortnite, Battle Royale, stuff like that. So I've been playing games for a very long time, and I personally have never used claw. And when it comes to claw, I personally tried it. I've tried it a few times, see how it is, and I think it's absolutely horrible. I mean, my fingers just hurt so bad after trying to do it. It feels super uncomfortable. And of course, I guess with any new binds, anything new like that, then of course it is going to take a little bit of time to get used to. But I just think it's not the best way to go, because I think there's a lot more better options to do than to play claw grip. And if you guys don't know what claw is, it's basically when you use your pointer finger to click all the, A, B, X, Y. If you play on PlayStation, I guess the, triangle, circle, X, all those buttons like that, is when you use your pointer finger to click all of those buttons. And I personally just think it's not the best idea. And for a lot of reasons. I mean, you guys even hear about it all the time. I joke about it on my streams. If you guys have ever come to some of my streams, I just roast people who play claw because it really does lead to a lot of issues when it comes to your fingers. Because if you want to play claw, probably in a few years your hands are going to look like this. And of course, people will say, well, it's not going to happen to me. But when it comes to things like that, a lot of times it's not instant. It might take a few years, but trust me, your fingers are probably going to end up looking like this by the time you're 25 if you do play claw if you play claw a lot. And also another thing to consider as well is when you're improving at a game, especially Fortnite, there's just so many different buttons and binds that you have to hit. So you have to press so many buttons extremely quick if you do play on controller. So you have a lot of binds that you have to place very fast, and they can be all over the place. So when it comes to playing on claw, the better you get, the faster you have to press your buttons, of course. And when you're doing that, it's going to leave it, it's basically going to make it even worse when it comes to the carpal tunnel that you will probably end up getting from using claw, just because, like, if you're not as good at the game, if you're kind of a beginner and using claw, it's not going to be as bad because you're not going to be spamming all the buttons all the time at a crazy rate. It's not going to be as bad as someone who is very good at the game, who just uses or continues to still use claw and just spams the absolute mess out of all the all their buttons with their pointer finger. It's going to be much different. So the more you improve, the worse it can get, because you're going to be using that same muscle over and over again. So that's probably a very good reason in which I don't use claw. And I think there's a lot better alternatives, because when it comes to Fortnite, like I mentioned just a few minutes ago, there's so many different buttons, so many different binds in the game. If you don't play, if you play like I guess normal grip, I guess you can say, if you play the normal grip, it's going to be way too hard to be able to compete, because there's just so many buttons that you have to click, and you're not going to be able to click all of them fast enough. So it's going to lead you to a severe disadvantage if you don't have some sort of claw, SCUFF, elite controller, keyboard and mouse, whatever the case may be. If you don't have something like that, you are going to be at a severe disadvantage. So that leads me to talking about the SCUFF controller and the elite controller, because that's kind of like the best alternative you can have, because on those controllers you have paddles. So instead of having to play a claw grip, you can just press the paddles on that controller, and it's going to be a lot easier. And it's also going to be better for your fingers. Of course, it's not perfect. Of course, when you play video games, overall it's not going to be good for your fingers. But of course, if you play claw, it's going to be much worse. But when you are playing SCUFF, it does help relieve it a little bit. Not going to be as bad. But when it comes to the SCUFF controller, for those of you guys who already know my opinion, I think it's a terrible controller if you use paddles. As far as cosmetic wise, if you want a cool cosmetic looking controller, customizable, SCUFF is definitely the way to go. But For paddles, the SCUFF controller paddles are actually horrible. They're not good. They're just made of plastic. They're just way too hard to press. It's just overall, anyone who's ever used an Elite controller would just immediately tell you that the SCUFF paddles are absolutely terrible. Because on the Elite controller, the paddles are actually very, very pressable. They're easy to use. They are very easy to press as well. So you're not going to have any problems in that regard. They're also made out of metal, so you don't have problems with them breaking in any sort of way. They're a lot easier to replace when if you want to take them out, put them back on. 10 times easier to do so than a SCUFF controller. But of course, on the SCUFF controller, some people might go to it just because. I guess one reason would be the Elite controller is only for Xbox players. So if you play on PS4, you're pretty much just stuck with a hard press paddle SCUFF controller. So that's just going to be unfortunate for you guys who play on PS4. But those guys who play on Xbox or PC and have the opportunity to play Elite controller, it's just 10,000 times better. I've had a few problems with my Elite 2 controller with the right bumper messing up, but as far as the paddles, I mean, I really don't have a choice because the paddles on the SCUFF controller are just not good at on any sort of level. It's really unusable. It's one of those things for those of you guys who have played on a TV and then played on a monitor. If you play on a TV for like 2-3 years, you're going to think that the monitor is fine. There's no input delay because you're just used to the lag on it. You're just used to, how bad it actually is. You just don't really notice it that much. But then when you switch to a monitor, you're like, oh, okay, my TV actually is a bunch of garbage. The input lag's insane. It doesn't look as good. All that kind of stuff. And same thing with the SCUFF and Elite controller. I used to have a SCUFF. That's the first controller I ever bought that was, other than the normal controller. And when I bought the controller, I had the paddles, and I only used 2 paddles. I only used the large ones on the side because the middle ones are too hard to press, way too hard to press. But I was like, oh, this controller is absolutely amazing. Like, it's super cool. You have paddles, all that kind of good stuff. And then eventually, I got an Elite controller back in like season 2 of Fortnite, so maybe like over a year ago, probably a year, not like a year and a half. I would say it could be like a year and a half. Year and a half ago, I bought an Elite controller, and the paddles were just night and day. I mean, once you have good paddles on the Elite controller, you can never play on a SCUFF controller again. I mean, you literally cannot play on a SCUFF controller ever again. And it's just one of those things, like I mentioned with the analogy of the TV. Once you feel the paddles of the Elite 2 or the Elite 1, Elite 2 controller, you just can't go back to the SCUFF. The SCUFF is just not good as far as the paddles. Nothing against SCUFF. I'm just being 100% honest. I'm not gonna give you some filtered review about how great the SCUFF controller paddles are just because I don't want to offend anybody who has one. Because I'm just gonna be honest with you. Just because there's going to be a lot of people, a lot of people who will never be honest about things just because they don't want to hurt some feelings, or maybe they have some sort of sponsorship, some sort of incentive to, make the controller sound good. Of course, if you've never had an Elite controller, I mean, the SCUFF isn't bad by any means. I'm not going to say it's a bad controller, but compared to the Elite, it's just not as good in a lot of ways. I would say in a few ways it could be better as far as like customization options, but as far as like performance, I just gotta say the SCUFF controller is just not the same. The only thing I like better about the SCUFF is the thumbsticks. But back to the topic when I was talking about the claw, I really don't think it's the best. I mean, of course, for those guys who play claw and maybe played it for a few years, eventually it's gonna catch up to you. It may not be like right now or maybe anytime soon. But a lot of you guys who are very good at the game and play claw probably will end up screwing your fingers up in the long term, which is just something I personally don't want to do. So that's why I use a controller with paddles. No, I know, I think there's a few more other options you can have, but SCUFF and Elite controllers are probably the 2 biggest ones that people use. So I just wanted to give my take on those as an alternative to claw, because I personally don't like claw. I think it's a bad move to make. And of course, some people would disagree with me, but that's just my 2 cents and my opinion on why personally I would never play claw. I tried it out. I think it's a bad idea, and that's why I will probably never use claw in the future. And so that's going to be my full opinion on the Elite controller, SCUFF controller, all the alternatives of claw, while I never use claw, all that kind of good stuff. So hope you guys found this video somewhat informative. If you guys liked it, make sure you guys do drop a like. Make sure you guys do subscribe to the channel if you guys are new. Turn on my post notifications so you guys can get notified for every single new video, because just sometimes YouTube doesn't like to send out recommendations. So make sure you guys have notifications on. And alright guys, I'll see you next video.